I found the camera hidden behind my 12-year-old daughter's teddy bear on a Tuesday night, and in that moment, I knew someone was going to pay with their life. Before we dive deeper, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more intense betrayal and revenge stories. And let us know where you are listening in the comments. The thing about military intelligence training is that it never really leaves you. Even 3 years after leaving the service, I still notice things other people missed. The way shadows fell wrong in a room. How furniture had been moved just slightly. The feeling that someone had been somewhere they shouldn't have been. That Tuesday evening started like any other custody visit. I picked up Emma from Sarah's house, the house that used to be our house before the divorce, and brought her back to my apartment for our scheduled overnight. Emma was quieter than usual, which wasn't like her. My daughter was normally a chatterbox, filling every silence with stories about school, her friends, or whatever book she was reading that week. "You okay, sweetheart?" I asked as we sat down for dinner. I'd made her favorite, spaghetti and meatballs, nothing fancy, but she always cleaned her plate when I made it. She pushed the noodles around with her fork, not meeting my eyes. "Yeah, Dad. Just tired." But I knew tired, and this wasn't it. This was something else. Something that made my old instincts prickle at the back of my neck. In my former line of work, you learn to read people's body language like a book. Emma was scared. After dinner, I helped her get ready for bed in the small guest room I'd converted into her bedroom. Pink walls, stuffed animals everywhere, and fairy lights she'd insisted on hanging around the window. It was supposed to feel safe. It was supposed to be her sanctuary. That's when I saw it. A tiny reflection caught my eye, just a glint of something that didn't belong behind Mr. Snuggles, the worn teddy bear she'd had since she was 3. The bear sat on her dresser, facing the bed. Always facing the bed. My blood turned to ice. I kept my voice calm, casual. "Hey, Em, why don't you go brush your teeth? Take your time, okay? Make sure you get all those molars." She nodded and shuffled to the bathroom. The moment I heard the water running, I moved. 15 years of intelligence work had taught me how to be thorough and silent. I approached the teddy bear like it might explode. Using a small flashlight from my keychain, I examined the area behind it without moving anything. There it was. A micro camera, professionally installed, with a clear view of the entire bed and most of the room. The kind of equipment that costs serious money. The kind that wasn't sold at your average electronics store. My hands started shaking, not from fear, but from rage so pure and hot it felt like molten metal in my veins. Someone had been watching my daughter. Someone had violated the one thing in this world I'd die to protect. I forced myself to think like an analyst, not a father. Don't touch anything. Don't disturb the scene. Gather intelligence first, then act. I pulled out my phone and took photos from multiple angles, careful not to use the flash. Then I began a systematic search of the room, looking for anything else that seemed out of place. Training kicked in. Check the corners where walls met ceiling. Examine any holes or gaps. Look for anything that had been moved recently. Behind the bookshelf, I found another one. Smaller, nearly invisible, positioned to catch angles the first camera couldn't see. Emma came back from the bathroom, and I had to bite my tongue to keep from screaming. How long had these been here? How many nights had my little girl been watched by some sick predator while she changed clothes, while she slept, while she was vulnerable and innocent in what should have been her safe space? "Dad, you okay? You look weird." I forced a smile, but inside I was planning someone's destruction. "Just checking to make sure your room's perfect, sweetheart. Come on, let's get you tucked in." As I pulled her blankets up to her chin, Emma looked at me with those big brown eyes, Sarah's eyes, and whispered, "Dad, do you think Mom's boyfriend Marcus is nice?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Marcus, Sarah's new boyfriend of 8 months. The guy who'd moved into my old house, who was there every time I picked up Emma, who always seemed just a little too friendly, just a little too interested in spending time with my daughter. "Why do you ask, baby?" He asked me a lot of questions. About you. About what we do when I'm here. And he's always trying to help me with stuff in my room at Mom's house. He says he wants to make sure I'm comfortable. Every word she spoke was another piece of evidence clicking into place. Marcus had access to Sarah's house. Marcus had shown unusual interest in Emma. And now Marcus's behavior was making my daughter uncomfortable enough to mention it. I kissed her forehead, my mind already racing through possibilities, through plans, through the kind of methodical destruction I'd learned to orchestrate in the service. Get some sleep, Em. Daddy's got some work to do. After she drifted off, I sat in my living room staring at the photos on my phone. 2 cameras. Professional grade. Positioned for maximum coverage of a 12-year-old girl's bedroom. I opened my laptop and began typing an encrypted message to Tommy Rodriguez, my old team leader who now worked private security. 3 words. Need a favor. Urgent. His response came back in minutes. What do you need? I attached the photos. Trace the equipment. Find out where it came from. And Tommy? This is about Emma. I'm on it. 24 hours max. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. 15 years of military intelligence had taught me patience, planning, and precision. But it had also taught me something else. How to destroy an enemy so completely they never saw it coming. Marcus had no idea what he just walked into. He thought he was dealing with some divorced dad who wouldn't notice a few tiny cameras. He had no clue he'd just declared war on someone who'd spent his career learning exactly how to dismantle people like him. But first, I needed to know everything. Every connection, every method, every single detail of what Marcus was doing and who else might be involved. Because this wasn't just about Emma anymore. This was about making sure Marcus never had the chance to hurt another child again. The next morning, I dropped Emma back at Sarah's house like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I was now operating in full intelligence mode, and Marcus had no idea he was being watched by someone who'd spent 15 years learning how to hunt predators. Sarah answered the door in her bathrobe, coffee mug in hand. Behind her, I could see Marcus sitting at the kitchen table reading the newspaper, my old spot, at my old table, in my old house. The sight of him there, knowing what I knew, made my jaw clench so hard I thought my teeth might crack. Thanks for bringing her back, Sarah said, giving Emma a quick hug. How was your night, baby? Good, Emma replied, but I caught the way her eyes darted toward Marcus and then quickly away. Fear. My daughter was afraid in her own home, and her mother hadn't even noticed. Marcus looked up from his paper and smiled, the kind of smile that probably fooled everyone else, but looked predatory to me now. Hey, Emma, how was Dad's place? The casual question sent ice through my veins. He was fishing for information, just like Emma had said, gathering intelligence about our routine, our conversations, our relationship. Fine, Emma mumbled, already moving toward the stairs. I set up that new desk lamp in your room, Marcus called after her. The one that'll give you better light for homework. Emma paused on the stairs, and I saw her shoulders tense. A new lamp, more equipment, more opportunities to hide cameras. That's great, she said quietly, then disappeared upstairs. Sarah turned to me with that look she used to give when she thought I was being paranoid. David, you're doing that thing again. That intense stare thing. Just thinking about work, I lied smoothly. You know how it is. Marcus folded his newspaper and walked over, extending his hand for the handshake he insisted on every time. I took it, making sure to grip just a little too firmly, just long enough to see his eyes flicker with discomfort. How's the consulting business going? He asked, like he actually cared. Busy. Lots of surveillance contracts lately. I watched his face carefully as I said the word surveillance. Nothing obvious, but I caught the slight tightening around his eyes. Guilty people always reacted to keywords. Well, we should let you get going, Sarah said, already moving to close the door. Same time next week? Actually, I said, I might need to switch up the schedule. Work's getting unpredictable. I'll call you. I needed flexibility. I needed to be able to move without Marcus knowing my patterns. As I walked back to my car, I pulled out my phone and activated the voice recorder app. Time to start documenting everything. Every conversation, every observation, every piece of evidence. Day 1 of active investigation, I spoke quietly into the phone. Subject exhibits suspicious behavior regarding target's schedule and activities. Installed new equipment in target's room under pretense of helping with homework. Target shows signs of fear and discomfort around subject. 20 minutes later, I was parked 3 blocks away, using military-grade binoculars to watch the house. Old habits. You always establish surveillance patterns before making any moves. At 10:47 a.m., Marcus left the house carrying a laptop bag. I followed at a distance, staying 3 cars back, using techniques I'd learned tracking targets in Afghanistan. He drove to a coffee shop downtown, the kind of place with free Wi-Fi and lots of anonymity. I parked across the street and watched through the window. Marcus set up in a corner booth, opened his laptop, and plugged in what looked like an external hard drive. For the next 2 hours, he sat there typing, occasionally glancing around like he was worried about being watched. My phone buzzed. Tommy Rodriguez. Got your intel, his text read. Call me. Private line. I drove to a secure location, a parking garage where I knew there were no cameras, and called Tommy back. David, what the hell have you stumbled into? His voice was tight with concern. Tell me what you found. Those cameras? Top-tier surveillance equipment. Military contractor grade. The kind of stuff we used for high-value target monitoring overseas. This isn't some creep buying spy cameras online. This is professional-level surveillance. My stomach dropped. Meaning whoever installed these has serious resources and serious knowledge. The equipment alone costs about $3,000. And David? I ran the serial numbers through my contacts. These were purchased through a shell company that's been buying surveillance equipment for the past 2 years. How many purchases? Dozens. Enough to monitor multiple locations. This isn't about just your daughter, man. This is bigger. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of it settling on me. Send me everything you found. Addresses, company names, purchase history. Everything. Already encrypted and in your inbox. But David, be careful. Whoever's running this operation has money, connections, and resources. They're not going to go down easy. After hanging up, I sat in my car reading through Tommy's intelligence report. The shell company had purchased equipment over 24 months. Cameras, hard drives, networking equipment, even software for organizing and cataloging video files. This was an organized operation. I thought about Marcus in that coffee shop, working on his laptop for 2 hours, uploading files, communicating with other predators, managing a network. My phone rang. Sarah. David, I need to ask you something. Her voice sounded strained. Emma's been acting weird lately. Really quiet, jumpy. Did something happen at your place last night? The irony was almost unbearable. Sarah was worried about Emma's behavior, but couldn't see that the danger was sleeping in her bed every night. She seemed fine to me, I said carefully. Maybe she's just adjusting to changes. What changes? Marcus living there. New routines. New rules. Kids need time to adapt. There was a long pause. Marcus is great with her. He really tries to connect, you know? He's always asking about her interests, helping with her room, making sure she feels comfortable. Every word Sarah spoke as a defense of Marcus sounded like evidence to me. He was grooming both of them, Emma as his victim, Sarah as his unknowing accomplice. I'm sure he is, I said. Just keep an eye on her, okay? Sometimes kids pick up on things adults miss. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing specific. Just that Emma's always been sensitive. After I hung up, I drove back towards Sarah's neighborhood and parked at the end of the street. I needed to see Marcus's patterns, his schedule, his habits. Intelligence gathering 101. Know your target better than they know themselves. At 4:30 p.m., Marcus returned home. At 6:15 p.m., he took out the trash, and I noticed he was carrying a small bag separately from the regular garbage. He walked that bag 2 blocks away to a public dumpster. Interesting. That night, after dark, I returned to that dumpster. The separate bag contained what looked like computer printouts, all shredded by hand. Someone was being very careful about disposing of evidence. I collected every piece and drove home. Time to start putting the puzzle together. For the next 72 hours, I became a ghost. I used every skill the military had taught me about surveillance, about patience, about building an airtight case. Marcus thought he was the predator, but he had no idea he was being hunted by someone who'd spent years tracking terrorists in places where one mistake meant death. I started with the shredded documents. Sitting at my kitchen table until 3 a.m, I pieced together fragments like a jigsaw puzzle from hell. Most of it was encrypted file names and what looked like user accounts, screen names that made my skin crawl. Princess Watcher, Daddy's Helper, Sweet Dreams 13. Each name represented a child somewhere being violated by people who thought they were untouchable. But one partially intact document made my blood freeze. It was a transaction record showing payments received through cryptocurrency. Marcus wasn't just watching Emma. He was making money off her. I photographed every reconstructed document, then secured the originals in a fireproof safe. Evidence chain was everything. When this went to court, I needed it bulletproof. Tommy called at 6 a.m. the next morning. "I've got more intel," he said without preamble. "That shell company? It's registered to a Marcus Anthony Kellerman, age 34. No criminal record, which means he's either new at this or very good at not getting caught. What else? Here's where it gets interesting. Kellerman has been in relationships with 3 different divorced women over the past 4 years. All of them had daughters between the ages of 8 and 14. The pattern was crystal clear now. Marcus was a predator who specifically targeted single mothers with young daughters. Sarah wasn't his girlfriend. She was his access point. "Send me everything on those other women," I said. "I need to know if their daughters showed signs of behavioral changes, if there were any unexplained incidents, anything." "Already working on it." "But David, there's something else." I ran a deeper check on his digital footprint. This guy is careful, but he's not invisible. He's been active on dark web forums dedicated to the kind of content you'd expect. I had to stop walking and lean against the wall. The implications were staggering. Marcus wasn't just watching Emma. He was part of a network, possibly distributing content, possibly coordinating with other predators. "How long?" I asked. "Best I can tell. At least 5 years. Maybe longer. 5 years of children being exploited while this monster moved from family to family like a parasite." That afternoon, I implemented the next phase of my plan. I needed to get inside Marcus's digital world, and I knew exactly how to do it. I drove to an electronics store in a different city and paid cash for a burner laptop. Then I went to a cyber cafe frequented by college students and created a fake identity. A divorced father named Robert Chun recently moved to town, looking for advice on dealing with custody issues and new relationships. Using skills I'd learned during my intelligence career, I began infiltrating the online spaces where Marcus was active. It took hours of careful work, creating a believable backstory, building trust slowly. But eventually, I found him. His username was NewDad2019, the year he'd started dating Sarah. Reading his posts made me physically sick. He gave advice to other predators about how to gain trust with single mothers, how to identify vulnerable targets, how to install surveillance without detection. He was a teacher, sharing his methods with others like him. But the worst part was reading his specific posts about Emma. He described her schedule, her personality, her fears. He talked about her like she was inventory. He discussed the quality of footage he was getting and hinted at plans to escalate his approach. One post, from just 3 days ago, made my hands shake with rage. "Target is getting suspicious. Asking questions. Might need to accelerate timeline before access is restricted." Marcus was planning to do something to Emma soon. Whatever his end game was, he was moving toward it. I screenshot everything, saved it all to encrypted drives, and documented the timestamps. Then I began the most dangerous part of my investigation. I started a private conversation with Marcus's online persona. Playing the role of Robert Chun, I reached out for advice about my situation with my girlfriend's daughter, who was becoming more comfortable around me. His response came within hours, and it was exactly what I expected: detailed instructions on how to gradually increase inappropriate contact, how to normalize boundary violations, how to ensure the child wouldn't tell anyone. He was coaching me on how to abuse a child. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Emma, about how many nights she'd gone to bed knowing someone was watching her, too scared to tell anyone. I thought about Sarah, completely oblivious to the monster she'd welcomed into our daughter's life. But mostly, I thought about those other children, the daughters of Marcus's previous girlfriends. How many of them were still carrying this trauma? How many were too scared or ashamed to speak up? At 3 a.m., I made a decision that would change everything. I opened my laptop and began drafting a comprehensive dossier. Every piece of evidence I'd gathered, every screenshot, every pattern of behavior, every connection to other victims. I organized it like the intelligence reports I used to write. Clear, methodical, devastating. But I wasn't sending it to law enforcement. Not yet. I was sending it to someone who could help me gather even more evidence before Marcus realized he was being hunted. I encrypted the file and sent it to Lisa Chun, a federal investigator I'd worked with during my military days. Someone who specialized in exactly this kind of predatory network. Someone who understood that sometimes you had to build a perfect case before making a move. Her response came back an hour later. Jesus Christ, David. This is huge. How deep does this go? I don't know yet. I typed back. But I'm going to find out. And Lisa? My daughter is one of his targets. This is personal. Then we do this right. No mistakes, no rushed moves. We get them all. I closed the laptop and walked to Emma's room, her safe room, in my apartment, where no cameras watched her sleep. She looked so peaceful, so innocent. She had no idea that her father was about to wage war against the people who threatened her. But soon, Marcus would discover what happened when you went after the child of someone trained to eliminate threats. He thought he was hunting the helpless. He had no idea he'd just become the prey. I needed Marcus to make a mistake. In intelligence work, you never just collect evidence. You create situations where the target reveals more than they intended. Marcus was careful, but he wasn't military-trained careful. He was about to learn the difference. The plan started with Emma's next visit to my apartment. On Wednesday evening, when I picked her up from Sarah's, I made sure Marcus overheard me talking to Emma about our weekend plans. We'll set up the new gaming system in your room, I said, loud enough for Marcus to hear. And maybe we can have that sleepover with your friend Jessica on Saturday. Marcus's head snapped up from his phone. The mention of another young girl spending the night in Emma's room had his complete attention. Jessica's sleeping over? Emma asked, confused. We hadn't planned any sleepover. We'll talk about it later, I said, giving her a look that told her to play along. My daughter was smart. She picked up on the cue immediately. Oh, right, she said. Yeah, that'll be fun. I caught Marcus staring at us with an intensity that made my skin crawl. He was already planning, already thinking about how to exploit this new opportunity. Jessica's the blonde girl from your soccer team? He asked Emma with fake, casual interest. No, that's Amanda. Jessica has dark hair, Emma replied, sticking to the script perfectly. I memorized the hunger in Marcus's eyes as he processed this information. He was thinking about another child, another victim to add to his collection. That night, I called Lisa Chun on a secure line. I need electronic surveillance approval for a private sting operation, I told her. My target is about to try accessing my apartment to install additional cameras. I want to catch him in the act. David, you know I can't authorize that kind of. Lisa, he's planning to escalate. I can feel it. If we wait for traditional law enforcement channels, more children get hurt. But if I can catch him breaking into my place, we have him on federal charges while we build the bigger case. There was a long pause. What do you need? Counter-surveillance equipment, motion-activated cameras, audio recording devices. And I need them invisible and admissible in court. I can't officially help you, but I can tell you that certain equipment might accidentally fall off the back of a federal truck tomorrow morning. Hypothetically, the next morning, I found a box of military-grade surveillance equipment in my apartment parking garage. Lisa was good people. I spent Thursday morning turning my apartment into a surveillance maze. Micro cameras in every room, motion sensors on all windows and doors, audio recording devices that would capture conversations from 3 blocks away. If Marcus tried to break in, I'd have him from every angle. Then came the hard part, leaving Emma vulnerable as bait. Friday night, I picked Emma up for our usual weekend visit, but this time I made sure Marcus overheard me taking a phone call. "What do you mean you need me to come in tonight?" I said loudly into my phone. "No, I can't bring my daughter to a work emergency." "Okay, fine. I'll drop her at my sister's place and be there in an hour." I saw Marcus lean forward, pretending to read his newspaper while hanging on every word. "Emma, honey, I'm sorry, but we need to make a quick stop at Aunt Jenny's house." "Work emergency." Emma nodded, understanding that she was part of whatever plan I was running. My daughter had inherited my ability to read situations and play her part perfectly. But we didn't go to my sister's house. We went to a safe house Lisa had arranged, a federal facility where Emma would be protected by armed agents while looking like she was at a family member's house. "Dad, what's really happening?" Emma asked as we drove. I looked at my 12-year-old daughter in the rearview mirror and made a decision that would haunt me forever. She deserved to know the truth. "Emma, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Marcus has been doing some very bad things. Things that could hurt you. I'm working with some people to make sure he can never hurt you or any other children." Her face went pale. "The cameras?" My heart stopped. "What cameras?" "In my room at Mom's house. I found one last week behind my mirror. I've been changing clothes in the bathroom because it scared me, but I didn't know who to tell." The rage that filled me in that moment was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Not only had Marcus been watching my daughter, but Emma had been living in terror, too scared to tell anyone. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I was afraid you and Mom would fight more. And I thought maybe it was Mom checking on me because she was worried about something." I pulled over and held my daughter while she cried. She'd been protecting Sarah and me from the truth, carrying this burden alone. "You did nothing wrong," I told her. "Nothing at all. And I promise you, Marcus will never hurt you again." That night, while Emma slept safely under federal protection, I sat in a surveillance van 2 blocks from my apartment watching multiple camera feeds. At 2:17 a.m., Marcus made his move. He approached my building using techniques that suggested he'd done this before, staying in shadow, avoiding security cameras, using tools to pick the lock on the main entrance. But he didn't know that every step he took was being recorded in high definition from multiple angles. He made it to my apartment door and spent 12 minutes working on the locks. Professional-level lock-picking skills. This wasn't his first break-in. Once inside, Marcus moved with confidence through my dark apartment. He went straight to Emma's room and began examining the furniture, looking for optimal camera placement. He pulled out a small bag containing surveillance equipment, cameras, wireless transmitters, motion sensors. But as he reached behind Emma's dresser to install the first camera, every light in the apartment blazed on. "Federal agents, you are surrounded. Drop everything and put your hands where we can see them." Lisa Chun and her team had been waiting in the apartment the entire time. Marcus tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. As they tackled him to the ground, I watched through my surveillance feed as months of careful planning came to fruition. But this was just the beginning. While they processed Marcus, I was already implementing phase 2 of my plan. Because the real target wasn't just Marcus. It was the entire network of predators he'd been feeding content to. And now that we had his equipment, his passwords, and his access codes, we could trace every single one of them. Marcus thought he was the spider in the web. He was about to learn he was just another fly. The call from Sarah came at 6:23 a.m., 3 hours after Marcus's arrest. "David, the FBI is at my house. They're saying Marcus was arrested 4-4. Her voice broke. "They're saying he was watching Emma. Tell me this is some kind of mistake." I was sitting in the federal building, watching through one-way glass as Marcus demanded a lawyer while FBI agents laid out printouts of his online activities across the interrogation table. Lisa Chun stood beside me, coordinating with agents in 12 different cities who were simultaneously raiding the homes of Marcus's network contacts. It's not a mistake, Sarah. But that's impossible. Marcus loves Emma. He's always been so good with her, so protective. He was grooming her. And he was grooming you too. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, what do you mean grooming me? This was the conversation I'd been dreading. Sarah wasn't just Marcus's unwitting accomplice. She was another victim, manipulated just as carefully as Emma had been. Think about it, Sarah. How did you meet Marcus? At Emma's soccer game. He said his niece played for the other team. Did you ever meet this niece? Another pause. She was sick that day, and then she moved away with her mom before I could. There was no niece, Sarah. Marcus targeted you because you were a single mother with a daughter the right age. Everything about your relationship was calculated. I could hear her breathing getting shaky. That's not. We fell in love naturally. He was kind, supportive. He helped with Emma, made her feel comfortable by asking detailed questions about her daily routine, by insisting on helping set up her room, by installing helpful equipment that happened to include hidden cameras. Stop. Her voice was barely a whisper. Sarah, I need you to think. Really think. Did Marcus ever encourage you to work late? To take weekend trips? To leave Emma alone with him for extended periods? The silence stretched, so long I thought she'd hung up. Oh God. When she finally spoke, her voice was hollow. He kept saying I worked too hard, that I deserved breaks. He'd offer to watch Emma while I went out with friends, or took those spa weekends he paid for. He said he wanted to build a relationship with her. How often were you out of the house? 2, sometimes 3 nights a week. And every other weekend for the past few months. I thought he was being supportive. I thought. She broke off, and I heard her being sick. I closed my eyes. Marcus had been systematically removing Sarah from the house to maximize his alone time with Emma. And Sarah, desperate for adult companionship after our divorce, had been grateful for someone who seemed to understand her needs. Where's Emma now? Sarah asked when she came back to the phone. She's safe. She's been with federal protection since last night. Federal protection? David, what aren't you telling me? Emma found one of the cameras herself last week. She's been living in terror, changing clothes in the bathroom, afraid to sleep in her own room. She didn't tell anyone because she was trying to protect us from fighting about it. The sound Sarah made was inhuman, part sob, part scream of anguish. My baby knew and I didn't. I brought a monster into her life, and I didn't even see it. Sarah, no, don't. Don't try to make me feel better. I failed her. I was so desperate to not be alone that I handed my daughter over to a predator. Through the observation window, I watched as agents showed Marcus photographs of Emma's room, photographs taken by his own cameras. His lawyer was frantically whispering in his ear, but Marcus's face showed no remorse, only anger at being caught. Sarah, there's more you need to know. Marcus wasn't working alone. What do you mean? He's part of a network. Other men, other children. The FBI is conducting raids across the country right now, and they found evidence that content involving Emma was distributed. The phone went dead. Sarah had hung up, probably to be sick again. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Sarah's sister, Jenny. David, Sarah asked me to call you. She's in bad shape. The FBI finished at the house an hour ago. They took computers, cameras, Emma's furniture, everything. And they told her that Marcus had been selling access to private family moments for almost a year. My stomach clenched. What kind of moments? Bath time, bedtime routines, Emma getting dressed, Sarah making breakfast in her robe. They said Marcus had cameras throughout the house, not just in Emma's room. He was selling footage of their entire life. The violation was staggering. Not only had Emma been exploited, but Sarah's private moments as a mother had been turned into profit for predators. How is she handling it? She keeps saying it's her fault, that she should have seen the signs, should have protected Emma better. The FBI agent said Marcus specifically targets single mothers because they're more likely to miss red flags when someone seems too good to be true. That was the cruelest part of Marcus's method. He preyed on women who were already vulnerable, already questioning their judgment, already afraid they weren't good enough mothers. Then he made them grateful for his attention while he violated their children. Jenny, I need to see Sarah. We have to figure out what's best for Emma. She doesn't want to see you. She's ashamed. She thinks you're going to try to take Emma away permanently. I looked back at Marcus through the glass. He was smiling now, probably because his lawyer had told him something encouraging. But what he didn't know was that FBI had already cracked his encrypted files and found evidence of dozens of other victims. Tell Sarah I'm not the enemy here. Tell her we both want the same thing. Keeping Emma safe while she heals from this. David, there's something else. The FBI found evidence that Marcus was planning to escalate. He had purchased equipment, drugs. They think he was planning to physically abuse Emma soon. The room spun around me. If I hadn't discovered those cameras when I did, if I hadn't acted as quickly as I had. He's never getting out of prison, I said quietly. I'm going to make sure of that. What do you mean? Marcus made one crucial mistake. He thought he was dealing with a regular divorced dad who wouldn't know how to fight back. But I spent 15 years learning how to destroy people like him. And now I have the full resources of federal law enforcement backing me up. Through the glass, Marcus looked up and made eye contact with me for the first time. His smile faded when he saw my face. He was beginning to understand who he'd really been messing with. But this was just the beginning of his education. The breakthrough came on day 4 of the investigation, when FBI Cyber Crimes Unit cracked Marcus's encrypted hard drives. What they found made my blood run cold and my military training kick into overdrive. Lisa Chin called me at 5 a.m. with an update that changed everything. David, you need to get down here. We found Marcus's client list. I drove to the federal building in a daze. When I arrived, Lisa led me to a conference room where the walls were covered with photographs, maps, and connection charts that looked like something from a terrorism investigation. How many? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. 47 active customers purchasing content regularly. But David, that's not the worst part. She pointed to a section of the wall labeled Content Distribution Network. Marcus wasn't just selling footage of Emma and other victims. He was running a subscription service. Customers could request specific types of content, specific scenarios, and Marcus would accommodate those requests. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Marcus had been taking orders for what to film, how to position cameras, what activities to encourage or create opportunities for. Emma's soccer practices, her sleepovers with friends, even her doctor's appointments, Lisa continued. Marcus had been scheduling and orchestrating Emma's entire life to maximize content production. I sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the systematic nature of the exploitation. Emma hadn't just been watched. Her entire childhood had been commodified and sold to the highest bidders. There's more, Lisa said gently. We traced payments back 18 months. Marcus made over $200,000 selling content featuring Emma and the daughters of his previous girlfriends. $200,000. My daughter's innocence had been worth $200,000 to these animals. What about the customers? Are you rating them? Already in progress. Federal agents hit 31 locations yesterday morning. We've made 23 arrests so far, including a high school teacher, a youth pastor, and a pediatric nurse. Each arrest was someone who had access to children, someone in a position of trust. The scope of the network was staggering. But David, we have a problem. What kind of problem? 16 of the customers are overseas, countries with no extradition treaties, and they're still actively purchasing content from other sources. Marcus was just one supplier in a much larger operation. I stared at the wall of photographs, children's faces, some I recognized from Emma's school and soccer team. Marcus hadn't just been targeting Emma. He'd been cataloging every child in her social circle. How do we get the overseas buyers? Lisa smiled grimly. That's where your military intelligence background becomes very useful. We can't arrest them through official channels, but we can destroy their operations through other means. She handed me a classified folder marked Operation Clean House. We need someone with your specific skill set to coordinate international intelligence sharing with allies who can shut these people down through their own methods. Some official, some less official. I opened the folder and found detailed profiles of the overseas buyers. Names, addresses, financial records, family information. Everything needed to systematically dismantle their lives. What's the timeline? We need to move fast. Word is getting out about Marcus's arrest, and the network is trying to scrub evidence and disappear. We have maybe 72 hours before they vanish completely. I studied the profiles. Most of these men had families, careers, respectable positions in their communities. They thought distance and international borders made them untouchable. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I'll need secure communications, financial access to their accounts, and coordination with international partners. Already arranged. You'll be working with contacts in Interpol, MI6, and some organizations that don't officially exist. That afternoon, I began the most satisfying work of my career. Using skills learned hunting terrorists in Afghanistan, I started systematically destroying the lives of 47 child predators. The high school teacher in Canada discovered that his entire internet history had been forwarded to his school board, local police, and every parent in his district. The youth pastor in Australia woke up to find his church congregation reading detailed logs of his online activities. The pediatric nurse in Germany found her medical license suspended and her bank accounts frozen pending investigation. But the overseas targets required more creative approaches. Working with international allies, we orchestrated a coordinated campaign of exposure and destruction. Bank accounts were drained and donated to child protection organizations. Professional licenses were revoked. Personal information was leaked to local law enforcement and community groups. The man in Thailand who had specifically requested content of Emma at her soccer practices found himself featured on the front page of Bangkok's largest newspaper. The businessman in Romania who had paid premium rates for footage of Emma's sleepovers discovered that his wife, children, and business partners had all received detailed documentation of his activities. Within 48 hours, the entire network was collapsing. Some members were arrested by local authorities. Others fled their homes and jobs to avoid community justice. Several simply disappeared, their lives so thoroughly destroyed that they had no choice but to start over with nothing. But the most satisfying destruction was saved for Marcus himself. On day 6 of his detention, I requested a meeting with him. Lisa arranged for me to sit in the same interrogation room where Marcus had spent the past week claiming his innocence and demanding better treatment. When they brought him in, wearing orange jail scrubs and shackles, he looked smaller than I remembered. Prison had already begun breaking down his confidence. "You wanted to see me?" he said, trying to sound tough. "I wanted you to understand what you stepped into when you targeted my daughter." I spread photographs across the table between us. Pictures of his arrested customers, newspaper headlines about the network's exposure, bank statements showing his frozen assets. "Your entire operation is gone, Marcus. Every customer arrested or destroyed. Every dollar you made confiscated and donated to victim services. Every piece of content deleted from every server." His face went pale as he realized the scope of what we'd accomplished. "But that's not why I'm here," I continued. I placed one final photograph on the table. It was Emma, taken last week at the safe house, smiling and laughing with the federal agents who had been protecting her. "I'm here to let you know that my daughter is going to be fine. She's getting therapy, she's surrounded by people who actually care about her, and she's going to heal from what you did. But you're going to spend the next 25 to 30 years thinking about how you destroyed dozens of children's lives for money." Marcus finally spoke, his voice shaky. "I didn't know you were military intelligence." "No," I said, standing to leave. "You thought you were hunting sheep. You had no idea you'd just declared war on a wolf." As I walked toward the door, Marcus called out, "Wait, I can give you bigger names, more important people in the network." I paused and looked back at him. "Marcus, You still don't understand. There is no network anymore. We already have everyone. The door closed behind me with a satisfying click. The hardest conversation of my life happened on a Tuesday morning in a sterile federal building conference room. Emma sat between me and her court-appointed therapist, Dr. Sarah Martinez, while Lisa Chun prepared to show us the full scope of what Marcus had done. Emma looked so small in the oversized chair, but there was something different about her posture. For the first time in months, she wasn't constantly looking over her shoulder or jumping at unexpected sounds. Emma, Dr. Martinez said gently, your dad and the FBI agents need to ask you some questions about Marcus. I know this is difficult, but telling the truth about what happened is going to help other children who might be in similar situations. My daughter nodded, her jaw set with determination that reminded me of myself. I want to help them. Lisa opened a folder carefully, keeping the contents angled away from Emma's view. Emma, you mentioned that you found a camera in your room at your mother's house. Can you tell us when you first noticed something wasn't right? It started about 3 months ago, Emma said, her voice steady. Marcus started asking me lots of questions about my friends at school, who was coming over, when they were visiting, what we did together. At first I thought he was just trying to be nice, like a stepdad or something. The word stepdad hit me like a punch to the gut. Emma had been hoping Marcus would become part of our family, while he was busy exploiting her trust. Then he started offering to help me with things in my room. Organizing my closet, setting up better lighting for homework, moving furniture around. He said he wanted me to be more comfortable. How did that make you feel? Dr. Martinez asked. Weird, but also guilty for feeling weird, because Mom kept saying how thoughtful he was being. I didn't want to seem ungrateful. Classic predator behavior. Marcus had made Emma complicit in her own exploitation by making her feel like she was the problem if she objected to his help. When did you first see the actual camera? 2 weeks ago. I was looking for my favorite book, and it had fallen behind my dresser. When I reached back there with my phone's flashlight, I saw this little black thing with a tiny red light. I thought maybe it was some kind of baby monitor or something Mom had put there to make sure I was okay. Did you tell your mother about it? Emma shook her head, and tears started forming in her eyes. I was scared she would think I was being paranoid. And I was scared that if it wasn't from her, then someone bad was watching me. I reached over and took Emma's hand. She squeezed it tight. But then I started noticing other things, she continued. Marcus would ask me about conversations I'd had with friends in my room. He knew things he shouldn't have known, like what pajamas I wore to bed or what time I turned off my lights. And he kept pushing Mom to let me have sleepovers, especially with my friends who looked older than their age. Lisa and I exchanged glances. Marcus had been selecting victims based on their physical development. Emma, I need to ask you something very important, Lisa said. Did Marcus ever touch you inappropriately or make you do anything that made you uncomfortable? No. But Emma hesitated. He kept trying to get me alone. He would volunteer to drive me places when Mom was busy or offer to help me with showers when I was sick. And he started buying me presents, clothes that Mom said were too grown up, but he said made me look mature and beautiful. The grooming process. Marcus had been slowly escalating, testing boundaries, preparing Emma for more serious abuse that thankfully we'd prevented. There's something else, Emma said quietly. I think he was giving Mom sleeping pills. What makes you think that? Mom started sleeping really heavily about 4 months ago. Like, the smoke alarm went off one night, and she didn't even wake up. And Marcus always made her tea before bed, said it would help her relax after work. Lisa made notes furiously. Drug-assisted access to victims was a common escalation pattern. Emma, you are incredibly brave for telling us all this, Dr. Martinez said. Is there anything else you remember that seemed strange or wrong? My daughter was quiet for a long moment, then looked directly at me. Dad, I heard Marcus talking on the phone once. He was in the backyard, but my window was open. He was talking about me to someone, describing what I looked like, what I wore to school. He used words that made me feel sick, like I was something he owned. The rage that filled me in that moment was white-hot and pure. Marcus hadn't just been watching Emma. He'd been advertising her to other predators. He said something about premium content and exclusive access and virgin material. Emma continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Lisa closed her folder and looked at me. We both understood what Emma had overheard. Marcus had been planning to sell live access to Emma, possibly to arrange in-person meetings with buyers. Emma, I want you to know that none of this was your fault, I said, fighting to keep my voice calm. Marcus is a very bad man who hurt you and other children. But because you were brave enough to notice things and tell the truth, we stopped him from hurting anyone else. How many other kids? Emma asked. Lisa hesitated. We found evidence involving 17 other children across multiple states. But because of your courage, all of those children are now safe too. Emma nodded solemnly. Good. I'm glad we stopped him. After Emma left with Dr. Martinez for a private therapy session, Lisa showed me the parts of the investigation we'd kept from my daughter. The sleeping pills were Rohypnol, she said. Marcus was drugging Sarah 3 to 4 nights per week. We found evidence that he was planning to drug Emma too, for what he called advanced content production. How advanced? Physical abuse. Possibly trafficking. We found communications with buyers willing to pay up to $50,000 for interactive sessions with Emma. The room started spinning. Marcus hadn't just been watching Emma. He'd been preparing to sell her to the highest bidder. There's more. We traced the tea Marcus was making for Sarah. He'd been slowly increasing the dosage over months, building up her tolerance so he could keep her unconscious for longer periods. And David, we found evidence that he'd done this with his previous girlfriends too. What kind of evidence? Medical records showing unexplained sleep disorders and memory issues in 3 different women over the past 5 years. All symptoms consistent with long-term Rohypnol exposure. And all of their daughters showed behavioral changes consistent with sexual abuse. Marcus had been operating like a serial predator for years, moving from family to family, perfecting his methods with each new victim. The other mothers, I said. Do they know? We're informing them today. FBI Victim Services is coordinating therapy for the children and support for the families. I stared out the window at the city beyond, thinking about all those mothers who, like Sarah, were about to learn they'd unknowingly handed their children over to a monster. What happens now? Marcus pleads guilty to federal charges and gets life without parole, or we go to trial and put Emma through testifying about everything. But honestly, with the evidence we have, his lawyers are already talking about a plea deal. I want him to go to trial. David, no. I want every detail of what he did made public. I want every parent in America to know how predators like Marcus operate. And I want Emma to see that the justice system actually works when good people fight back. Lisa nodded slowly. Then we go to trial. And we make sure Marcus becomes a cautionary tale that protects other children. As I left the federal building that day, I realized this wasn't just about justice for Emma anymore. This was about making sure every parent knew the signs, every child knew they could speak up, and every predator knew that there were people like me watching, waiting, and ready to destroy them completely. Marcus thought he was untouchable. He was about to become an example. The trial of Marcus Anthony Kellerman began on a cold Monday morning in federal court. I sat in the front row, directly behind the prosecution table, where Emma would be able to see me when she testified. Sarah sat across the aisle, looking like she'd aged 10 years in the 3 months since Marcus's arrest. We hadn't spoken much since that first phone call. The guilt was eating her alive, and every conversation ended with her apologizing for things that weren't her fault, while I tried to convince her that Marcus was the only one to blame. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Janet Morrison, had warned me that this trial would be difficult. Marcus's defense team was trying to paint him as a victim of mental illness, claiming he never intended to harm anyone and that his actions were the result of childhood trauma. They're going to try to make the jury feel sorry for him, Morrison had explained. But we have something they don't expect, a military intelligence officer who documented everything and built a case they can't break. The first week of testimony focused on the technical evidence. FBI cybercrime specialists explained how they traced Marcus's network, recovered deleted files, and connected him to 47 customers across multiple countries. They showed the jury encrypted communications where Marcus discussed Emma like she was inventory, describing her routines, her physical development, and his plans for escalating the abuse. Marcus sat at the defense table in a suit his lawyers had chosen to make him look respectable and harmless. But I could see the real Marcus underneath, the predator who had violated my daughter's childhood for profit. On Wednesday, Sarah took the stand. I thought I was protecting Emma by finding her a father figure, she testified, tears streaming down her face. Marcus seemed so caring, so interested in her well-being. He would ask about her day, help with homework, make sure she felt comfortable and safe. At what point did you realize something was wrong? Morrison asked. When the FBI showed me the cameras. When they explained that every kind gesture, every helpful moment, every time I thought Marcus was being a good stepfather, he was actually setting up opportunities to exploit my daughter. The defense attorney, a slick-looking man named Bradley Watts, tried to suggest that Sarah had been negligent, that a good mother would have noticed the signs. But Sarah was ready for him. Mr. Watts, Marcus is a professional predator. He spent months studying me, learning my vulnerabilities, understanding exactly how to manipulate my desire to give Emma a stable family. He didn't just abuse my daughter. He weaponized my love for her against both of us. By Thursday, the prosecution had established the scope of Marcus's operation. But the most important testimony was still to come. Friday morning, Emma took the stand. She wore the blue dress we'd picked out together, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked young and small in the witness chair, but when she started speaking, her voice was clear and strong. Marcus made me feel like I was the problem, she testified. When I got uncomfortable with his questions or the way he watched me, he would tell Mom that I was having trouble adjusting to their relationship. So I tried to be nicer, more welcoming, because I didn't want to ruin Mom's happiness. Morrison guided Emma through her testimony carefully, never pushing too hard, always giving her time to collect herself when the memories became difficult. Did you understand what the cameras were for when you first found them? Not at first, but then I started having nightmares about being watched. I would wake up feeling like someone was in my room, even when no one was there. I started changing clothes in the bathroom and sleeping with my blanket over my head, but I felt silly because I couldn't explain why I was scared. Did you tell anyone about finding the cameras? I was afraid to. Marcus had already told Mom that I was jealous of their relationship and trying to cause problems. I thought if I said something about cameras, everyone would think I was making things up to get attention. The defense cross-examination was brutal to watch. Watts tried to suggest that Emma had misunderstood innocent activities, that she was confusing normal stepfather behavior with something sinister. But Emma held her ground. Mr. Watts, normal stepfathers don't ask 12-year-old girls detailed questions about their underwear. Normal stepfathers don't insist on helping with baths and bedtime routines. And normal stepfathers definitely don't install hidden cameras to watch children change clothes. The jury was riveted. Several members were openly crying. When Watts suggested that Emma might be influenced by her father's military paranoia, Emma looked directly at Marcus for the first time since the trial began. My dad saved me. He noticed things that everyone else missed because he knew how to recognize danger. Marcus counted on people not paying attention, not asking questions, not believing children when they said something felt wrong. But my dad believed me, even when I was too scared to tell him everything. The prosecution rested their case on Monday of the second week. The defense called character witnesses who testified about Marcus's volunteer work with youth organizations, his clean criminal record, his troubled childhood. Dr. Patricia Williams, a psychiatrist hired by the defense, testified that Marcus suffered from severe mental illness that impaired his judgment and made him unable to understand the consequences of his actions. But Morrison destroyed that argument during cross-examination. Dr. Williams, if Mr. Kellerman was unable to understand right from wrong, how do you explain his use of encryption software to hide his activities? Well, he might have learned those techniques without understanding their implications. What about his use of shell companies to purchase surveillance equipment? Mental illness can manifest in complex ways. What about his systematic targeting of single mothers with daughters in specific age ranges? Does mental illness explain that level of planning and organization? Dr. Williams had no good answers. The final blow came when Morrison called me to the stand. Mr. Thompson, please describe your background for the jury. I served 15 years in military intelligence, specializing in counterterrorism and surveillance operations. I'm trained to identify threats, gather evidence, and neutralize enemy operations. When you discovered the cameras in your daughter's room, what was your assessment of the threat level? This was a sophisticated, professional-level surveillance operation targeting a child. The equipment used, the placement strategy, the network infrastructure. This wasn't some guy who bought a spy camera online. This was someone with significant resources, technical knowledge, and experience in avoiding detection. In your professional opinion, was Mr. Kellerman's operation the work of someone who didn't understand right from wrong? Absolutely not. Every aspect of Marcus's operation showed careful planning, risk assessment, and consciousness of guilt. He used encryption, shell companies, and systematic manipulation to avoid detection. He targeted vulnerable families, built trust over months, and escalated his abuse gradually to minimize resistance. This was a textbook predatory operation run by someone who understood exactly what he was doing and how to avoid consequences. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all charges. Federal trafficking of child pornography, guilty. Conspiracy to exploit minors, guilty. Unlawful surveillance, guilty. Distribution of child sexual abuse material, guilty. 37 counts in total. The judge sentenced Marcus to life in federal prison without possibility of parole. As they led him away in shackles, Marcus looked back at me one final time. I wanted him to see my face, to understand that this was what happened when you went after someone's child. This was what happened when you underestimated a father who knew how to fight back. Outside the courthouse, Emma hugged me tight. Is it over, Dad? It's over, sweetheart. Marcus can never hurt you or anyone else again. But even as I said it, I knew this was just the beginning of Emma's healing process. The trial was finished, but the real work of putting our family back together was just starting. 6 months after Marcus's sentencing, Emma and I sat in Dr. Martinez's office for what she called a milestone session. The therapy had been long and difficult, but my daughter was finally starting to look like herself again. The bright, curious girl who used to chatter nonstop about books and soccer and her plans to become a veterinarian. How are the nightmares? Dr. Martinez asked Emma. Better. I only had one this week, and it wasn't the scary kind where I felt like someone was watching me. It was just a regular bad dream about failing a math test. Normal 12-year-old problems. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. And how do you feel about staying at your mom's house now? Emma glanced at me, then back at Dr. Martinez. Safer. Mom got rid of all the furniture from my old room and let me pick out everything new. And she installed those special locks Dad recommended. But mostly, I feel safer because Mom listens to me now. Really listens. The relationship between Emma and Sarah had been the hardest thing to rebuild. Sarah's guilt over missing the signs of Marcus's abuse had made her overprotective to the point where Emma felt suffocated. It took months of family therapy sessions before they found their balance again. Your mom is dealing with her own trauma from this situation, Dr. Martinez had explained during one particularly difficult session. She's learning that being manipulated by a predator doesn't make her a bad mother. It makes her another victim who needs healing too. Now, Sarah came to pick up Emma from therapy sessions. The three of us would sit together in the waiting room sometimes, working through custody arrangements and school decisions like a normal divorced family. Not perfect, but functional. Healthy. There's something I want to tell you both, Emma said during one of those waiting room conversations. I've been thinking about doing something to help other kids. What kind of something? I asked. I want to write a book. Not about the scary parts, but about how to recognize when adults are being weird. How to trust your feelings when something doesn't seem right. How to tell safe adults even when you're scared. Sarah reached over and squeezed Emma's hand. I think that's a wonderful idea. Dr. Martinez had explained that some trauma survivors find healing through helping others. Emma's desire to turn her experience into protection for other children was a sign of remarkable resilience. Would you help me write it, Dad? You know all about recognizing bad guys. Of course I will, sweetheart. Over the next few months, Emma and I worked on her book together. She would tell me what she wanted to say, and I would help her find the right words. We called it Trust Your Feelings, a kid's guide to staying safe. The book was simple but powerful. Emma explained how Marcus had made her feel uncomfortable in ways she couldn't name at first. She described the importance of telling trusted adults about weird questions or requests, even if the adult seemed nice. She emphasized that children were never responsible for adults' bad behavior. If a grown-up makes you feel like you're the problem for being uncomfortable, she wrote, that's actually proof that they are the problem. The publisher wanted to rush the book to market, but Emma insisted on something first. She wanted to meet with other children who had been through similar experiences. Lisa Chun arranged for Emma to speak with 3 other victims of Marcus's network, girls whose families had agreed to participate in a support group for survivors. The meeting was held at a child advocacy center, with therapists present to help if anyone became overwhelmed. I was scared that my mom would be mad at me for not telling her sooner, one of the girls, Maria, admitted. But after I told her, she said she was proud of me for being brave. My dad explained that predators are like burglars, another girl, Jessica, said. They don't target houses with good security systems. They look for places where people aren't paying attention. It's not the house's fault when it gets robbed. Emma nodded. My dad says that recognizing danger doesn't make you paranoid. It makes you smart. The support group became a monthly meeting. Parents attended too, sharing strategies for rebuilding trust and helping their children heal. Sarah became one of the most active participants, using her experience to help other mothers recognize the signs of manipulation. I learned that loving your child doesn't automatically protect them, Sarah told the group during one session. You have to stay alert, ask hard questions, and trust your child's instincts even when it's inconvenient. 1 year after Marcus's conviction, Emma's book was published. She donated all the proceeds to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, specifically to fund educational programs for parents and children about predatory behavior. The book launch was held at our local library, with Emma reading excerpts to an audience of parents, teachers, and community members. Lisa Chin attended, along with several of the FBI agents who had worked on Marcus's case. Emma's courage didn't just save herself, Lisa told the audience. Her willingness to speak up led to the arrest of 47 predators and the rescue of dozens of other children. She turned her trauma into triumph by choosing to help others. After the reading, a woman approached us with her teenage daughter. My daughter read an advanced copy of Emma's book, the woman said. It gave her the courage to tell me about her softball coach, who had been asking inappropriate questions and trying to get the girls to change in front of him. Because of Emma's book, we reported him before anything worse happened. Emma smiled, a genuine, proud smile that reached her eyes. That's why I wrote it, she said. So other kids would know they're not crazy when something feels wrong. That evening, as we drove home from the book launch, Emma was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. Dad, do you think I'm going to be okay? Like really okay? Not just pretending to be okay. I pulled over and turned to look at my daughter. This incredible, strong, wise young woman who had survived something horrible and chosen to use her experience to protect others. Emma, what Marcus did to you was terrible and wrong, and it's okay if you're never completely over it. But you've already shown that you're stronger than what happened to you. You've taken back your power, and used it to help other kids. You're not just going to be okay. You're going to be extraordinary. She was quiet for another moment, then nodded. I think so too. As we pulled into our driveway, Emma's phone buzzed with a text from one of her friends, asking about plans for the weekend. Normal teenager stuff. The sound of her laughing at whatever her friend had said was music to my ears. Marcus had tried to steal Emma's childhood, her innocence, her sense of safety in the world. But he had failed. She was healing, growing, becoming the person she was always meant to be. And somewhere in a federal prison, Marcus was learning what happened when you went to war with the wrong family. Justice had been served. But more importantly, Emma was free. 2 years after Marcus's conviction, I stood in the kitchen of our new house, the first home Emma and I had chosen together. Sarah lived just 15 minutes away, close enough for Emma to bike back and forth between our houses, far enough that we all had space to heal and grow. Emma was at the kitchen table, working on her second book while her golden retriever puppy, Scout, slept at her feet. She'd insisted on getting a dog after reading that pets help trauma survivors feel safer and more grounded. Scout had been the best therapy decision we'd ever made. "Dad, listen to this chapter," she said, looking up from her laptop. "I'm writing about how to rebuild trust after someone breaks it." She read aloud. "Trust isn't like a light switch that gets turned on or off. It's like a garden that grows slowly when you take care of it every day. Some people will try to convince you that broken trust can never be fixed, but that's not true. It just takes patience, honesty, and people who prove they deserve it." My daughter was 15 now, wise beyond her years, but still beautifully, wonderfully young in the ways that mattered. She played varsity soccer, maintained straight A's, and had started a peer counseling program at her high school. The trauma hadn't defined her. It had refined her into someone extraordinary. "That's perfect, sweetheart," I told her. "You're going to help so many people with these books." The impact of her first book had been beyond anything we'd imagined. Trust Your Feelings had sold over 1 million copies worldwide and been translated into 23 languages. More importantly, it had sparked conversations in homes, schools, and communities about child safety in ways that actually empowered kids instead of just scaring them. Emma had received thousands of letters from children and teenagers who said her book helped them recognize inappropriate behavior and speak up about it. Law enforcement agencies across the country now used her book as part of their community education programs. But the most meaningful response came from parents. "Your daughter's book saved my son," one mother had written. "He read it and realized that his uncle's special games weren't normal. Because of Emma's courage to share her story, my child is safe." The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. Sarah arrived with groceries for the dinner she was cooking for us, a monthly tradition we'd established to show Emma that divorced parents could still be a family, just a different kind of family. "How's the writing going?" Sarah asked Emma, kissing the top of her head. "Good. This book is harder because it's not just about recognizing danger. It's about healing after danger finds you." Sarah and I exchanged a look. We'd both learned so much about healing over the past 2 years. Sarah had done her own work in therapy, dealing with the guilt and self-blame that nearly destroyed her. She'd learned that Marcus's manipulation tactics were sophisticated precisely because they were designed to fool good people. Recognizing that she was a victim too, not just a failed parent, had been the key to her recovery. "I used to think that loving Emma meant protecting her from everything," Sarah had told me during one of our co-parenting conversations. "But I learned that real protection means teaching her to recognize danger herself and trusting her to come to us when something's wrong." Now Sarah was working with a local organization that educated parents about online safety and predator tactics. She'd become an advocate, using her experience to help other families avoid what we'd been through. As we sat down for dinner that evening, Emma looked at both of us with a seriousness that still sometimes caught me off guard. "I want to tell you both something," she said. "I've been thinking about what happened with Marcus a lot lately, not in a bad way, but trying to understand what it all meant." Sarah reached across the table and took Emma's hand. "What have you been thinking?" I used to be angry that it happened to me. But then I realized something. If it hadn't been me, it would have been some other kid. Maybe a kid whose dad wasn't trained to notice things. Maybe a kid whose parents weren't strong enough to fight back. Maybe a kid who wouldn't have survived it as well as I did. My throat tightened with emotion. So in a weird way, I'm glad it was me, Emma continued. Because I had you too. I had people who loved me enough to destroy the bad guys and help me heal. And because it happened to me, I could write books and help other kids stay safe. Sarah was crying now, but they were good tears. Emma, you are the strongest person I know, she said. Stronger than me, stronger than your dad, stronger than anyone has a right to expect from someone so young. I'm strong because you taught me to be, Emma replied. Both of you. Even when everything was falling apart, you never let me think I was broken. You made me feel like I was worth fighting for. As the evening wound down and Sarah prepared to leave, Emma hugged both of us together, something she'd started doing recently, pulling us into group hugs that reminded us we were still a family despite everything that had changed. I love you both, she said, and I want you to know that I'm okay. Really, truly okay. What Marcus did was horrible, but it doesn't own me anymore. I own my story now, and I'm using it to help people. After Sarah left and Emma went to bed, I sat on the porch with Scout, looking up at the stars and thinking about the journey that had brought us here. Marcus was serving life without parole in federal prison. His network had been completely dismantled. The 47 predators who had purchased content were either in prison, under investigation, or had their lives so thoroughly destroyed that they posed no further threat to children. But more than that, Emma's story had created a ripple effect of protection and awareness that was still spreading. Her books, her speaking engagements, her advocacy work, she'd turned her trauma into a shield for other children. The lesson was profound and life-changing. Evil thrives in silence, but truth has the power to protect generations. When we refuse to let shame and fear keep us quiet, when we fight back with everything we have, when we transform our pain into purpose, that's when we truly win. Marcus thought he was hunting the helpless. Instead, he'd awakened a fierce protector in a 12-year-old girl who would spend her life making sure other children never experienced what she had. Emma was right. She owned her story now, and she was using it to light up the darkness for others. As I finish telling you this story, I want to ask you something that's been on my heart. How do you find the strength to turn your worst moments into your greatest purpose? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, and please, let me know where you're listening from around the world. Your stories and support mean everything to families like ours. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more intense, emotional tales of betrayal, justice, and ultimate triumph. Because every time you share these stories, you're helping spread awareness that could protect another child, another family. Until we meet again in the next thriller, remember, the darkness only wins when good people stay silent. Keep speaking up, keep fighting back, and keep believing that justice and healing are always possible.